So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Retired Living True series. Today's topic is the truth about who should be on your team. So welcome, everyone. I see we have a lot of people on the call, so that's fantastic. And so, as many of you know, my wife, Annette, and I are both real estate agents, and we specialize in helping seniors who are downsizing. And over the last 20 years or so, Annette and I have had the privilege of working with many families. And from our observations, what we've noticed is those clients who have and are living their most successful lives are those who have consciously decided who to surround themselves with. So we've noticed there are differences. So those who have put a great team around them seem to do really well throughout life, and those who haven't aren't as well off as those who perhaps surrounded themselves with the right people. And when we say successful, this includes areas such as health, wealth, family, relationships, just to name a few. So all aspects of life is really about who we interact with and who we surround ourselves with. So I'm sure everyone will agree, each of us needs others in our lives to live, and our team that we have will determine whether or not we're living our best possible life. So today's question we hope to help with is, who should we in fact have on our team? And before we do that, we have a couple of housekeeping items. First one I have here is I'd recommend everyone find a piece of paper and a pen so you can take some notes. And for those of you who are new to the Retired Living True series webinars, this will last approximately 90 minutes. The first 60 minutes or thereabouts I'll spend talking to our panelists, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And then at approximately 11 o'clock, we'll open it up to your questions that you may have of the panelists. The webinar is being recorded, so you don't need to write everything down, but as things mean something to you, I would suggest taking a note. And tomorrow morning, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording of this video if you wanted to go back to anything, as well as a handout that we'll send out that'll have some of the notes that we'll make later today based on what was covered this morning. So what I would just first like to do again is, if everybody could have a pen and a piece of paper available to them. And what I would like you to do on that sheet of paper is draw a 3x3 grid. So hopefully everyone can see on the screen a grid showing 9 boxes. And so if we can just take a moment and just roughly draw a 3x3 grid, so we have 9 boxes. And then what I would like you to do is, in the very center, write me. So this is basically who we're going to surround ourselves with, who should be on our team, who is our we. And then so me in the middle, and me could be me and my wife Annette. So it could be kind of like a we as a household, but it's or it could be just me individually. So it doesn't necessarily just mean an individual, it could be a couple. And then once you've done that, the first two we're going to talk about, the first 2 boxes, starting in the top left corner, is financial. So if you can just write finance in the very first box at the top. And then the second one we can cover is legal, and then we'll do the others as we go along. But what I'd really like you to do is, in the bottom corner of each box, is write who. So who is going to be your person on the team in that category? And you may not know now or at the end of today, and that'll kind of be the homework where it makes sense for you if you identify you need to have someone in that category to then work on filling in that box. So in the case of this finance, if we don't have anyone else helping us at all in finance, who would be the person that could help us in that area? And this will make more sense as we go along. So just take a moment and do that. And while you're writing that down and getting that onto your sheet of paper, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists today. So I've got to have our panelists unmute themselves and join me. So welcome, Juliana, Mark, Barbara, and Stacey. So to help me today, I thought the most ideal people, or a number of them, would be people from our communities that we have here in the area. So I have 3 panelists today who represent different communities, and they have a wealth of knowledge because they work with many residents who are seniors who have put a great team around them. So they're very familiar with who you might want to have on your team, as is our financial personal representative on the call today, Juliana. So I'd just like to go through and have each of you introduce yourself, if you wouldn't mind. And if we could start with you, Juliana, can you just introduce who you are to the audience and why you're on today's webinar?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Juliana Hart. I'm with Allstate Financial Services. Been doing financial and retirement planning for about 22 years. I focus on retirement mostly, long-term care, disability, life insurance. I'm here because I do help people put a team together, and I've seen a lot of people not have a team in place and to their detriment down the road. So I'm happy to be participating today.
Great. Thank you, Juliana, and welcome. Mark.
Yeah, hi, Mark Regan. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Cascades of the Sierra. We're a full continuum community where we have independent living, assisted living, and memory care. And I've always enjoyed working with seniors. And when Brett reached out, I was excited to be part of this panel and to be able to chat a little bit about who you want to surround yourself with. So I'm excited to be here.
Great. Welcome, Mark. Barbara.
Morning, everyone. I'm Barbara Seiler with Revel Rancharrah. We're Reno's newest independent apartment community over at Bill Harris Ranch. And I'm here today because our involvement with all of these families as they're researching their options for living has really shown us how necessary it is for you to plan in advance and have that team together sooner rather than later. So really happy to be here.
Thank you, Barbara. And Stacey.
Good morning. My name is Stacey Taylor. I'm the Executive Director and Administrator at a new community opening up in January, Clearwater at Rancharrah. I'm excited for this new journey. I was born and raised in Reno, so I've been here my entire life. And I've been in the senior living industry for around 7 years now. And prior to that, I was in banking here in Reno for 23 years. I am a firm believer that knowledge is king. And so in all of our jobs, I find that we need to know as much as we can to help those that we serve. And so I'm here to share what I can with you today.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacey, and for everyone for being on the webinar today, our panelists and our audience alike. I was just looking in the chat box. A couple of people have said that they were having trouble hearing. I don't know if, Barbara, you might need to speak louder. Someone's saying there, yeah, yours is muffled, and I had the same experience. Someone else said they can't hear me. So actually, could I have everyone raise their hands if you are having trouble hearing, if we have an audio issue? So on your controls for the Zoom call, you should see raise hand. Or if you're on a phone, I see a couple of people are on a phone, *9 would also cause you to raise your hand if you're having trouble with the audio. So I have like 3 people, and maybe you want to just 4 people, try turning up your volume. And let me just ask if you can put your hands down, or let me do that. Those who can hear fine, could you just raise your hand just so I can get a better sense whether we need to do something drastic. So just raise your hand if you can hear fine. So I assume a lot of people, it looks like a lot of people can hear me fine. And was that also the case of other panelists? I'm assuming so. So I apologize to those who are having trouble. It looks like the majority of people are hearing okay. So I just suggest turning up your volume on your device. And I'm just looking at the controls to see if there's anything I can possibly do to make us all louder. And not really. So we'll go on. This will be recorded. I will check the recording. And if need be, I can manipulate that so that the sound is louder when you get the link tomorrow. And for those having trouble, you might just need to rewatch. Just to my panelists, Juliana, Mark, Stacey, Barbara, can you all hear me fine?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Let me just lower the hands. And then the last thing as we go along, also on your controls, you'll see there's a Q&A little icon, Q&A for question and answer. If you have questions of the panelists as we go along, feel free to type those in. And as appropriate, I'll ask the panelists as we go along, or we'll definitely cover those during the Q&A. And during Q&A, we'll have people unmic if you just want to ask your question to one of the panelists. So let's jump in. Let me start with you, if I may, Juliana. Let's talk about finance, which is the box everyone should have drawn. And let me just go back to that slide if people were still drawing their 9 boxes. So when it comes to finance, Juliana, why is it important to have someone on our team in that category? And what does that category mean, finance?
Well, first of all, you know, I do a lot of retirement planning, and I have a lot of couples that are clients. And oftentimes just the husband will come in and deal with me and the wife won't know what's going on. So first of all, if you are a couple and, you both should know where all of your finances are, all of the accounts you have, all the bills that are being paid, because if anything were to happen to either one of you and you didn't know what bills are paid, you don't know where your assets are, if you have any money, that's going to leave you in a bad position. Now, what if something were to happen to both of you and you don't have anyone that knows who your advisor is, knows where your finances are, and you need money maybe for medical reasons or get into like an assisted living or something? It's so important to have another person who is on your team, and your advisor can be that person as long as they know who a family member is. But I see people so many times, have something happen. They can't get to their money. Their family can't get to their money. They don't know where it is. They don't have any sort of power of attorneys. So it is so imperative that you get somebody on your page, even if you get your information in a folder and somebody knows where to get to that information. But your money is what's going to drive paying bills, making sure your mortgage is paid, hospital bills, anything like that. Family members are usually the first person I go to. I'm power of attorney for my father, who's 82, and I handle all of his bills. He's in a nursing home. If something were to happen to me, no one would know how to care for my dad or how to get to his money because I'm the only person on his accounts. So not only do you need to have one person kind of as who knows where all of your stuff is, it's important to have kind of a backup because, if something were to happen to me, my family would be left in lurch, and so would my dad.
So what are some of the things that should be down on that list for that person who might need to help us out at some point? What should they be able to easily access or know about if something was to happen to me where I'm no longer able to deal with the finances or need help in some way?
So the who would be a family member, a trusted friend. If you don't have those kind of people, you could do a bank trustee. What they would need to know is where your money is, how to access it, any important bills that need to be paid, whether it's, car payments, mortgage payments, any sort of medical payments, any sort of important bills that need to be paid. If you could put it all in one location would be great. So that one person could come and pick up your folder and say, here's their financial advisor. I'm going to call them and start there. And maybe the financial advisor will have in their file who the power of attorney is or who the next person to call is. But any sort of details you can put in that is really important. And again, your who could be family members, whether it's children, nieces or nephews, brothers, sisters, or just close friends that are like family that you would trust with that information.
And what about in the category of finance? Do we need to have anyone else in that area, or a CPA, a tax advisor? Is there anyone else in that you would recommend being on our team?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have an attorney, not to jump ahead to legal, but not, an attorney on that, your CPA would have information, anywhere where you would have your assets, have their names written down. So if you need to, somebody needs to go in to get that information, they would know who to contact with anything that deals with you.
And so what about couples? Sometimes, one spouse has, done a fantastic job, doing the tax returns and everything, and they pass, and then the other spouse is left. Is there anything we can do to try to plan for that in advance in terms of who should be on our team?
Sure. Well, first of all, I encourage, if you are a spouse who does not usually participate in bill paying, financial information, CPAs, I would start getting involved. At least knowing who handles it, get to know them. Just because I do see so many, spouses where one passes and the other one doesn't even know how much money they have or where it is. And so, if you can do some pre-plan, get involved, know where everything is, and then have a backup. Have a child who you trust to also know where everything is in case something were to happen to the two of you, or maybe you're too emotionally distraught to handle any of that.
Great, thanks, Juliana. So Mark, Barbara, Stacey, did you want to jump in based on your vast experiences with lots of residents? anything in the finance category that we need to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think as with a lot of things in life, preparation. You want to prepare. Maybe doesn't come to fruition for many, many years, but at least you've talked about it with each other, if it's a couple or with family, the trusted, to have things all in one spot, like from a finances standpoint, passwords, to be able to maybe have like a book with all that information in it, so that if something does happen, there's a resource area that the spouse or others can go to.
So important to identify the who, and then that who knows where to find the information.
Right.
Something also to keep in mind, unfortunately, one of the things that can tear a family apart are finances. And I saw a lot of that. So have someone that you trust. Sometimes a third party is a nice fresh set of eyes. Somebody that isn't directly involved is nice to have on your team.
Great, thank you, Stacey. And again, this will vary whether it's a single person or a couple in terms of now and later, and trying to cover for both should something was to happen. Did you have anything you wanted to add there, Barbara, before we jump to the next box?
No, I think most everyone covered it, but I really want to stress to everyone that you do have people who know where your information is. We had a resident unfortunately pass away, not due to COVID recently, and her information was hard to find. And I think that it's very, very, very important that you not have just one person, but possibly two or three, as Stacey was alluding to there. Somebody, maybe a family member, a friend, and then maybe a professional person who knows where you keep that.
Thanks, Barbara. Is anyone else having trouble hearing Barbara, or is it just me?
No, I am a little bit as well.
A little muffled.
I turned up my volume as loud as I could, but is that better?
No, it's not, Barbara. I'm just wondering, is this the computer you normally use? Is there any chance of you jumping off and reconnecting? I'm guessing the audience are probably going to have a hard time hearing you.
I'm going to try audio through my phone. I'm going to jump off the computer.
Yeah, maybe dial into the number by phone. That might make it better. And just mute yourself and be connected. Great idea, Barbara. So that's our very first box in the top left-hand corner. I'm actually going to turn off the slides now so we can each see the speakers. So let me just stop the sharing, just one moment. Okay, so now you can see each of the speakers. So in the second box, going from clockwise, let's say we'll go around, we'd hopefully written down legal. So what does legal mean to us? Why did we collectively come up with legal as being an important category to talk about who should be on our team? Who would like to take that?
I'll go first.
Everyone should have legal representation on their side. They have gone to school, they have studied, and they know what you need to have in order. Estate attorneys, they're very important. You can go to different places, have trusts written up, wills, things of that sort. Probate cannot be extremely friendly. So I would definitely have legal representation on your side.
And why is that, Stacey? Why is that important?
It will save money in the long run.
So to save money in the long run is one. Okay.
Very much so.
And
Any
less
other
headaches.
reason why? Go, Mark.
I was just going to say, and less headaches, particularly
Headaches
at a
for who?
stressful time.
I think it's really important to have your power of attorney paperwork in place, whether that's medical and or financial. A lot of times people will need a power of attorney to step in, but maybe they're already mentally diminished, and you're trying to get power of attorney paperwork signed. And it's a lot more difficult if somebody's mentally diminished, because that power of attorney paperwork can be challenged. So, in your planning, think about who you want your power of attorney to be and possibly have that paperwork signed and ready to go in this, so to speak, binder we keep talking about, binder of information. But have your power of attorneys in place ahead of time before you need them, because when you need them, it may be too late for somebody to be able to get your signature legally.
Very
we're talking about
commonplace.
who's by the sound of it, who's going to help us put it in place, and then who's got the power to be able to take to implement our directives, our
Yes.
wishes. Okay. And then can I just ask on that, Juliana, so does that apply back into the finance category? Do they kind of go together? Because a power of attorney, do I need that in order to be able to do maybe some of the financial transactions if I'm acting on behalf of someone?
Yes. So you'll be able to make financial decisions for them, possibly get into their accounts by being the power of attorney if they need money and they don't have anybody else on the account. So financial power of attorney is very important, as well as medical. Again, I'm the power of attorney for my father, and he's diminished. And, I have to call his doctors all the time, and they will not talk to me without that power of attorney. So financial as well as medical power of attorney are equally as important.
Okay, great. Mark, were you going to jump in, or Stacey with something?
It's commonplace now just to be admitted into the hospital that they ask for your advance directives and things of that nature, because it has been problematic that they want to know what your wishes are. Should there be life-sustaining equipment involved? Those kinds of things. In assisted living, we will also ask for an advance directive. There is a form called a POST now in Nevada that you can have your doctor do with you. It's in bright pink so that it's easily seen and visible. It's generally on your back door so that first responders know what to do in the event of an emergency. And that can be done with your doctor.
Thank you. So just for those who are trying to take notes, so under the legal, some of the things I heard each of you mention, if I was just to recap, was I heard will, so you might want to write down will if you don't have one. I heard trust. I heard power of attorney. So will, trust, power of attorney. I heard, was it healthcare directive?
Advanced directive.
An advanced healthcare directive. And then potentially the POST form, which is, what is that again? The physician's order of life-sustaining treatment.
Life-sustaining, exactly.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with those, you might want to just write those down so you can do some further research, or if you're going to go and see someone, an attorney, for example, you kind of at least know the categories that they're probably going to talk to you about. Barbara, please go. No volume, Barbara. We're not hearing you.
Hey, Brett, let me just jump in for a couple thoughts.
Yes, you do that while I try to work out Barbara.
Yeah, first off, I mean, as we'll probably touch on this a number of times as we go through this morning, but it's better to have conversations sooner than later. They can be uncomfortable, whether it's the parents or the kids, but it's only going to get more difficult the longer you wait. So it's better to have those initial conversations, and some of those are going to be involving a power of attorney, both for health and for financial. Here at Cascades, folks move into independent living and they don't need one. If they're moving into assisted living, we highly suggest if they don't have one that they get one. And for memory care, you have to have one. So just in general, like with a lot of things we're going to speak of, especially the POAs, the pulse, I mean, they're good things to have and to talk about and to start putting into place sooner than later.
Great advice. And that term POA that everyone in the industry says is, again, power of attorney for anyone who just wasn't picking up on that. So when it comes to the who, what suggestions do we have for being on our team? If we're trying to fill in the box that our attendees have, who would some examples of the who be to help us with any of those legal instruments, documents that need to be in place?
State attorneys.
Attorney, the obvious one. Is there any other
State.
alternatives?
Estate attorneys.
And a state attorney. So we have a great
Yes.
sponsor, Rich Schultz, who's the
Yes.
estate attorney we all use. but there's many great ones in the community. So, and then if you're not financially in a position to do so, we have community resources also that will help with some of those documents. For example, the Nevada Senior Law Project. So if you don't know where to go, just reach out to anyone on the call today, myself, and we can point you in the right direction of resources in the community that can help with that, because it is important to have those in place.
And your doctor can help you with your pulse.
And your doctor, fantastic. So
your children, your power of attorney, a close friend. Again, anyone, if you don't have family members or children, you could do nieces and nephews, brothers, sisters, anybody that you trust that will take care of you when you're in that position. And sometimes it's just a neighbor. Sometimes it's, you know, your favorite person at Starbucks. I don't know, just whoever it is in your life that you trust to take care of you. That's who I would put on there.
Great advice. Yeah, and I know, like my father-in-law, for his mother, she has vision issues, and he helps by looking at the bank statements regularly, going online and looking at those to make sure that, you know, there's nothing wrong. So, you know, with all the fraud and things that go on, it's important to maybe have someone also overseeing, if you're not able to, that money coming out is what's meant to be, that there isn't something strange going on. So great. So Stacey, you'd mentioned, you know, a doctor being able to help. So let's talk about our next box that we have. And we'd written down when we all spoke, health and medical as a category. So in health and medical, you kind of named the first person who we should have, which is, you know, a primary care physician. And I was surprised talking to each of you how many people either don't have a primary care physician or haven't seen them in so long that they probably don't have a primary care physician because that person's moved on. So talk to me about why that's so important in terms of having, in this category, primary care physician on our team that we've seen recently.
Do you want me to answer that one?
Stacey, yeah, please.
Okay. Your doctor is your best friend. I mean, they can help you with your health, and they can also help guide you in this with a pulse and such. And you are able to talk to them a little more freely sometimes, and they can help with a wide range of things. They are able to offer advice as to perhaps where you would be better suited. Are you fine at home? Are you fine bringing in caregiving? Would you be a better candidate for independent living, assisted living, memory? They are your best friend. They really are. And sometimes in Reno, it's difficult establishing a primary care physician. And so we have partnered with several doctors that can help with that. Your insurance can be part of this as well. Make sure that your insurance is in line with what you need. If you're from California, one of the first things you should do is take care. If you are a Kaiser insuree, you definitely need to take care of that. And along with your Medicare, find a supplemental plan that can work with you in Nevada. Do that before you even move, because that can be a real obstacle for you. I've seen it.
Juliana, you had something to add? Thanks, Stacey. That's great.
So not only, you know, it's important to have a primary care physician, but it's also important to have a list of who your doctors are. My dad has a primary care. He has a Parkinson's, a neurologist doctor that he goes to. He just moved into a nursing home from assisted living. They're asking me who his dentist is, who his eye doctor is, because they're trying to get him taken care of. And, you know, if you don't have any advocates or family members or somebody who's taking care of you, they don't know where to get that information. So if you can have a list of who your doctors are and where they are, so if somebody does need to go seek that information out, your past medical records, they know exactly where to go.
So why are we talking about this all today? I'm just thinking, we've got lots of people on the call. I'm looking at names. They're all super healthy and fit. I see people who work out every day. They don't need any of this today. So, but why is it so important that we're talking about it?
Because things can change, you know, maybe not overnight, but, you know, they certainly can. And I think one of the things that that I've just been thinking about too is that, once again, it's required in assisted living and memory care, just as Juliana was speaking about, that we need to have that information before they move in. because we need to be able to know who to reach out to, what their medications are, all of those things, so that we can take care of them. So it's important. And
I think Mark just froze. I think we got the gist of what Mark was saying, though. The unexpected can happen, and we just need to prepare. And it makes me think of my dad. I think it was last year when he had a stroke, or just prior, just being unprepared because he was healthy and no one expected anything to happen. And you just end up being caught off guard and not knowing where to find any of that information. Yeah, Stacey.
One of my favorite sayings is the best time to get a loan is when you don't need one. And so truly the outcomes are much better when you're doing this on your own time rather than in an emergency situation. It's never too early. And one thing with your primary care physician that we do find is make sure that they know who your other doctors are, so that your pharmacy will talk at times, but things can get awry, and they need to know what medications you're on so that everyone is talking, so that your primary care knows who your neurologist is, who your cardiologist is, all of those things. Information is key. There's never too much.
That's great advice, Stacey. And then that ties back into Juliana, as you keep repeating, have those all written down. Who are those other care providers? And then one you just mentioned, Stacey, I didn't even think about, was like the pharmacist. I know, like in our family, I've been asked, well, which pharmacy do you want that at? It's like, I got no idea. Annette takes care of that. So just having all those all listed down. So if I was to recap what you just said in that box, who to have on your team, your primary care physician, any other medical providers. One of you mentioned Medicare Advantage plans, so whether it's Prominence or Senior Care Plus, to understand that and what the differences are versus straight Medicare. And then what did I miss? There's something else one of you mentioned. I guess the who to help with that, having an advocate. I think you touched on that, Juliana, someone who might be able to help them go along. I know one of you talked about when we were preparing for this, that sometimes it's great to take someone else with you on a doctor's appointment because they talk in all sorts of lingo. We don't necessarily understand what they're saying. Maybe we're not confident to ask questions by what they mean, but to have someone else who can also ask questions, and the two of you can compare notes later as to, what did that all mean based on, what the doctor had said. So all great advice. Juliana, please.
To speak to the advocate, not only do you want to take this advocate with you on doctor's appointments, but financial appointments as well. Introduce them to your advisor. If you are somewhat diminished and you're getting advice, having an advocate with you to make sure that you are being properly taken care of and not taken advantage of in circumstances is important as well. So, that advocate can come into play in a lot of avenues.
Yeah, I think that would be true for just about talking to any professional, even a real estate agent, your attorney, financial advisor, doctor, just having someone else who can be looking out for you, maybe know different questions to ask, and then to be able to help you, the two of you compare notes at the end of it. It's like, well, what was actually said. Yeah, great advice. So let's go to the next box. So we're filled in the top three. Let's go clockwise and drop down to the one on the right, and we'd all written down family. So what does it mean by having a family on our team? Who would that be and why? Barbara.
I'm gonna try again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Barbara.
Oh, I turned my computer off and turned it back on. So I will just share an example, Brett, that I shared with you before. I think that family is a really tough one because we have to make sure that they're aligned with what we believe and what we want. So we need to try to remember to keep the people on our team that are in line with what our own true wishes are. And just being one of 11 children, I can tell you that's not an easy task sometimes. And we see it here in the communities all the time. So it's very important, as everyone is stressing here, education is power. And the more that we educate ourselves about what we want and make sure we have people on our team that want those same things.
Great point. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in most cases, family, whether it's immediate family or not, know you the best. And in most cases, it's going to be the children of the parents. And, once again, have those tough conversations, or they can be tough, but better to have them sooner than later. And usually, like in my family, there's four of us, and my brother was the oldest, and he kind of managed my parents, and he was the POA, and once again, that's a typical scenario, but it's usually the best. Although there are, obviously, we all know situations where families aren't the best, and they do need to reach out. Whatever you feel most comfortable and trusting is kind of what that will guide you.
Thank you, Mark. So we know not everybody has family members that make sense. Maybe we have no family. That's certainly the case of some, and we'll talk about that more. And then Mark, you touched on, in your family, it was the oldest child. So maybe someone wants to touch on that. Do we need to give thought as to which child? Should it default to the oldest, or are there sometimes children we shouldn't choose, and why, for people who haven't really thought about it? Are there obvious choices and not obvious choices? Are there sometimes where we should have no family involved? Juliana, Barbara?
Go ahead, Barbara, if you want to go. I'd like to touch on that. I am power of attorney for my father, and I'm the youngest of three. And my other three siblings have no interest, whether it's able to in capacity or just location wise, they have no interest in taking care of my dad. And so I stepped in as power of attorney, but had I not and chosen not to, it would have been a fight as to who's in charge. And so I think you need to have a discussion with your children. If this were to happen, which one of you wants to step in and take care of this, and who's behind that person? And it doesn't have to be, I don't want to because I don't love you, just who's maybe closest proximity wise, has the better background to help. Me being in finance was a logical choice with his finances. And so, those are important discussions, hard discussions to have, but you should have those ahead of time.
So I'm taking from that, just because someone's an obvious choice, you, Juliana, with a financial background, if I was your dad, I shouldn't just assume, though, that while you're able to, you may not be willing to if I haven't had a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. I think that's a mistake we see often. People just assume, and they've never spoken to that person, and that person has, as you said, in some cases, no interest, not willing to, for whatever the reason may be.
At one point, my parents had a trust, and I was the executor. And shortly before my father passed, he and my mother had a discussion, and they started thinking about it. It's just my sister and I. They did not want anything to tear us apart, and they didn't want any added stress on us, facing the death of a parent. So at that point, my parents made a bank trust department their executor. And at first I thought to myself, well, why would they do that? But I thought about it. Sometimes taking you out of the equation is the best thing. Grieving is difficult. And when my father passed, and then 7 years later, my mother passed, I am so glad that there was someone else, a professional that came in and took care of it. I was going through my own thing, having lost both of my parents. And so think about that. And those that are your power of attorneys and those that are your executors, whatever the case may be, make sure that you can handle it. You may be a very strong person. You may be able to, you find yourself, you think you're the best person for it. Maybe you're not. Make sure you are. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of stress.
Anyone else have anything they would like to add?
I just would like to share quickly. In a situation with my parents, my mom had gone through a very, very severe stroke and was going to be paralyzed. And she had made one of my sisters, who was an emergency room nurse, her, executive order for all of her medical. And I have a brother who's a physician, and his whole life was to save people. So when my sister had to make the decision to pull the plug on my mom, she called all 10 of the siblings, said, you got to get here now to say goodbye to mom. And it was very, very dividing in our family for a certain amount of time. But I think that my mom picked the person who she knew was going to follow through with her directive. And that's the most important thing, as hard as it is. You have to be strong enough when you put that together to put the people in place to follow through on your wishes. So sometimes that's not kids. Sometimes that's not family members. Sometimes that's someone else that you respect and who knows you and will follow through for you.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing that. And just following up on that, should we be like, if we've chosen a child or a sibling, should we be telling others in the family? Does that sometimes make sense, always make sense, so that they know why you've chosen or why mum chose you to be the person?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say communication, as in anything, is key. And that is, if you have 10 siblings like I did, or one or none, you need to communicate, and you need to be letting everyone know what your role is, what you know, the amount of responsibility you feel to it, and why you're doing what you're doing. That communication is very, very important.
So that helps them all then with understanding why a certain person was chosen. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Wonderful. Anyone else have anything they want to add to the family category before we move on? So the who's in family would be a child, a sibling. Are there other options? Those were the two I heard. Who else in family might be able to help?
Grandkids.
Grandchildren, great.
Yep.
Grandchildren could be the
A
who.
niece, a nephew.
Niece, nephew.
Their sisters, even if they're younger,
Say that one again, Juliana.
brothers or sisters too.
Brothers and sisters, yeah. Nieces, nephews.
It truly can be anyone that you consider family. We have someone here who recently is going through that, and they don't have any children, they don't have any living siblings, but they have a trusted individual who was like a cousin or a sister-in-law. And I mean, that it can be anyone in that extended family, you know, that you trust and that you're willing to take to make those tough decisions for you.
Again, like Barb was just saying, someone that's not in right in that immediate realm, someone that's a little layer, maybe further beyond, that isn't going through it quite to the extent that your daughters, your sons are going through, your spouse, those kinds of things.
So that's a really good lead in then to our next category that we had written down, and that was a trusted advocate. So for those people who don't have family, there are no grandchildren, children, siblings, etc. Who could, what is the category trusted advocate? What does that mean? And then let's talk about who some of those people could be. Barbara, please.
You know, I would say that many of us have people that, if we go to a church, if we go to a ladies group, if we go to a men's group, if we're in a hunting club, you know, you have trusted people that you go to for everything that you do. I think it's important that people understand that they need to have allies that understand them and their wishes and will support them in those things. Earlier, when you couldn't hear me, I was going to offer you 2 websites, and I did already put them on the chat, but they were for the National Association of Legal, and then there's another one for legal people, because honestly, probably one of the single most important things is that you legally set up what your wishes are, and that can be done through the polls, that can be done through your physician, but you just have to remember, you have to have people who are listening to you and not taking control, and you know, because you want to do it before they can take control, I guess, is the point.
Yep, all about preparation. Thank you, Barbara. And so the box we're working on at the moment, for those who've got the 3x3 grid, the 9 boxes, we're on the bottom right-hand corner. And again, we're talking about trusted advocates, who they could be. What Barbara had mentioned, lots of different social groups that we could belong to, someone you know in there. Friend, obviously, we haven't really talked about friend, but it could be a good friend. What else in the area of trusted advocates? Stacey, you were talking to me about case managers. Yes. So what's a case manager and how do they fit into the trusted advocate category?
Case managers, there are different companies in the area that are case managers. They generally have a social work background that can help navigate through the process of of aging and what is best for you at any given time. I have had really some powerful experiences with them where they're the advocate for the potential resident in the case of me being in assisted living and memory support. And they have completely got your best interests at heart. They will look at several communities and decide which one fits that specific person. They know their personalities, they know what they like, what they don't like, and they can really zero in on exactly what that person is looking for. Now, they can also work when family's involved. Again, sometimes families, they're going several different directions. They live in different states. They've got jobs, they've got children. They're going, 100 miles an hour. And families will sometimes engage case managers to help them navigate the process. So it can be for someone that doesn't have family, and it can be for someone that does have family. That is what they are trained to do. There are guardianship services that you can take that can help you. And this is very important when memory becomes part of it. Having guardianship is extremely important when you are looking at memory support or having someone evaluated. It's better to have that in place before than again when an emergency occurs and you don't have guardianship. So Guardianship Services of Nevada, I've worked with them a lot, and I've worked with different case managers. Again, they are so helpful.
So thank you, Stacey. That's great information. So we're talking about case managers separate from me being discharged from the hospital because something has happened, because there's case managers there. This is someone who has a bigger view of the things that could help me. And then you mentioned guardianship, which is great services that we have. But usually, if I understand correctly, that's where it's been appointed because I have no one to make decisions for me. So now a guardian's appointed.
Yes.
Whereas if we can, with some planning, it'd be better for us to make our own decisions and choices of what we want versus someone else being appointed, not knowing what our wishes were. Am I understanding that correctly?
They will go to doctor's appointments with you. For instance, just a quick example. I had a resident that had a case manager for 3 years while this person lived in their home, went to the house on a regular basis, knew how they were doing, and when it was time to move into assisted living. This person was also there when this resident moved to memory support. So step by step, they were there for that person. And it was extremely helpful for the family. And in this case, it was a niece.
Thank you, Stacey. Does anyone else want to add to our category of advocates, trusted advisors?
Yeah, I was just going to share a story that happened, recently in the last week, where a woman, they've been neighbors for probably 25 years, and the woman who first contacted me is probably in her 50s or so, and her friend next door, who's in her 80s, she was doing all the legwork for her. She was looking on the internet and calling places, getting information. And then they both came in together, looked at our model, and, she was and is a trusted advocate for this woman. And, it was nice to see them work together, and they each got a copy of everything so that down the road they could be in communication. And, that happens. If you do have that good kind of neighbor friend for years. So.
Thank you, Mark. That's a great suggestion. Yeah, it can be anyone. Yeah, a really good neighbor. Yeah. So do we have any caveats? Anyone, if we don't have someone, do I befriend someone tomorrow and suddenly they're my trusted advocate? No. So just be careful on your choices. Definitely give it some thought. Maybe get a second opinion.
It's always best if you've known this person for a while, because anyone can be friendly and befriend you, but knowing someone for a while gives you that trust that is very important when you're dealing with these kinds of situations.
Most definitely. Did you have anything, Barbara? I'm trying to think. You were telling me about a situation.
I just want to share, if I could, a quote from the book from my coworker. It's called Be Your Own Hero, and I will talk about that later, but it's just so great. It has been proven that 70% of how we age is a result of the lifestyle decisions we make. By putting in place the support, services, and an environment that will allow you to continue to age well, you increase your chances for staying independent and healthy and living a life full of purpose and meaning. So basically, while we still have our ability to do so, all of us wonderful baby boomers beyond, we need to make educated decisions for ourselves and make sure that they're communicated really effectively through people that we trust.
Well put, Barbara. Couldn't have said that better. Thank you. So let's talk about our next one, which is education. So the box below the me, for those who have drawn out the 9 boxes, if you could just write in there education. So this probably seems like a strange one in terms of who should be on our team. But why is education important in terms of being able to have a successful, healthy life continuing as we age?
Yeah, I think education is knowing where your resources are. Knowing, having a financial advisor, educate yourself on the things you need to know. Educate yourself on assisted livings, on who to reach out to if something's going on. Retired Living Truth Series is great because all of the sponsors are great resources if you needed somebody to talk to. But I think educating yourself ahead of time on what you need to know and who do you need to go to is really important.
Thank you, Juliana. And I thank you for saying that. The Truth Series, and that's the whole reason all of us get together and do this, is so you have resources available. So if you're stuck and you don't know who to have on your team, talk to anyone who's on our webinar today, and they'll point you in the direction of people to consider to have on your team, whether it's them or someone else. And that's why we've just recently done several community virtual tours, so you can know what resources are out there in terms of communities, and why we do free legal consultation days and complimentary financial consultations just to help people with direction where to go. So any of our sponsors are great resources to reach out. So thank you, Juliana, for mentioning that. What else in terms of education should people think about in terms of writing in this box? So the Truth Series, where else can we get good sources of information?
Senior living communities. And like I said, we try and empower ourselves with knowledge to pass on to others. That's our job. And
so Stacey, can I approach you if I have questions? But I don't even think I'm moving into your community, to be honest, but would you be willing to help me? Give me some direction?
One of the things I've said on many tours is, even if I'm not the community that you choose, please use me as a resource. I've helped a lot of people, and I'm more than happy to help you.
Thank you, Stacey.
Yeah, that's
true of Barbara, Mark, any of our communities in the area.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's our philosophy here at Cascades, is that if this isn't the right fit for some reason, whether now or a year from now or down the road, if you have questions or, run it by us. The other thing I was just going to say, as the saying goes, knowledge is power. It also gives you confidence. And there's just a lot of great resources, whether it's online or through the senior communities, Truth Series. There's a lot out there. Just keep digging away, and you'll feel better for it. Yeah.
Your public library, read.
The library. So 2 others I had written down that I think are very helpful. I'm a proud member of AARP. I enjoy receiving their publication monthly, and I would encourage everyone, if you're not already a member of AARP, to subscribe, simply because they have some fantastic articles on things that we should be thinking about as we age. Some don't apply at all to you today, but others do, and they just kind of get you thinking about these topics. And sometimes they have some great resources and tips. And they also have an 800 number. So if you're stuck and you don't know who to call, there is a complimentary 800 number you can call, and they will try to find you resources for whatever it is that you're challenged with at the moment. So I'd suggest AARP. I think it's like $12 a year or something. I signed up for a lifetime membership for, I don't know what it was, $100 or something, best money ever spent. And then the other one that we have here in our community that I think, and we've had them at various different seminars, and they're a sponsor, is the University of Nevada, Reno, the Sanford Center for Aging. It's part of the School of Medicine. They have a fantastic resource in our community, have wonderful programs. You know, they're not trying to sell you anything. They're there just to help you. They're a community resource. And again, people should be taking advantage of them and having them on your team. And we won't go into all the wonderful things that they provide, but I would encourage you to learn more if you don't already. And again, we'll have them on future panels because they are one of our sponsors. So we're just coming up on 11 o'clock. Did you guys have anything you want to add that we've left out going through this before we open it up to questions from the audience?
One last thing. You know, when we are going to go buy a car or a house or anything else in our life, we research it. We go and we look at the ratings for things, and we test things and talk to people, and we ad nauseum. If you're like me, you know, you spend a lot of time and energy to research. And I think that that's what we're trying to say to people today is you have a plethora of people here on this call and in your community that are here to help. But you have access to so much information today through the internet. You can find books about any other thing. So there's all kinds of information out there. And if you can't find it, talk to people, and hopefully you'll find the right person to help you find it.
And Barbara, speaking of books, you had mentioned a great book. Could you just share that with the audience, the book? Yeah, there we are.
So,
We lost your audio.
This
we
is
just lost you for a moment, Barbara. Could you just start that again? You dropped out.
Sorry about that. So this was written by one of the associates in my company, Revel. It's Catherine Owens, and it's Be Your Own Hero, Senior Living Decisions Simplified. I went to the park yesterday in our beautiful weather here in Reno and read it cover to cover. And I will tell you, it is a very good book because it just simply talks about moving your life forward in the best way possible. And it's not just a plug for our communities. It's really truly getting people to look at, why are you thinking the way you're thinking right now? Let's think about planning and making good decisions for the future. So it really has to do with today. And I have some, if you want to know more about it, reach out to me.
You're muted.
You're muted. Brett, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you all. I was going to say, yeah, we'll have Barbara's phone number. It'll be in the handout you get tomorrow. I'll have it on a slide in a moment. So feel free to reach out to Barbara. It is a great book. And what was I going to say on that? Yeah, I think we'll just jump across to questions now from the audience. But actually, before I do, I'm just looking at my notes. Let me just quickly share this screen. There's that slide. There we go. So we have two more events we have one more event this year before we end our 2020 Retired Living Truth Series calendar. And the next event on the calendar is on December the 3rd. We have our final virtual tour of a community for the year with Morningstar. So actually, let me just put up a poll at the same time. If you are interested or would like to be on that tour, again, virtually via Zoom, it'll be a Zoom meeting. You should have a poll on your screen now, just mark down, and we'll get you registered and the information for that. And then we have our 2021 program calendar all booked and all of our topics. And our first topic for 2021 is on January 21st, and that's the truth about living longer. So what do we need to know about as we all live longer? And it'll kind of set the theme and what we're going to talk about through the 2021 program. So if you would like to attend that, just mark the box and we'll make sure you're registered and get the information. We've had several people call and email asking, well, is this in person, virtual? What are we doing for 2021? And I'm sure a lot of people could probably guess our plan was to be back at our venue in January, but given everything that's happening at the moment, I'm suspecting that's going to be highly unlikely. We had planned on having, like 25 people based on distancing and everything. I doubt whether we're probably going to be able to do that. Probably won't make sense. So we will continue with Zoom until such time it's safe for us to be back in the room with whatever number of people makes sense. And we will do it simultaneously at that time via Zoom and in person. But I'm guessing for January, it'll be in person. Sorry, it'll be virtual. We're in the process of having the schedules printed. So they'll go out in the mail the very start of December. I think that's just gone to the printer. So we'll get those out to everybody. By the start of January, we'll have the full schedule up there. Actually, probably the end of this week, we'll have the topics up, but just not the write-up. So if you're interested in what all the topics are for next year, if you go to the retiredlivingtrueseries.com, you'll be able to see those in the next week or two. So with that, any other housekeeping? I think that covers it. Let's jump to questions. So I see people have typed in a lot of questions, and we'll go through all of those, and I'll read through the chat because I saw there were some questions in there. If you have a question you would like to ask, happily unmute you, just raise your hand. So again, if you're dialed in, I see some people called in from their phone, *9 will let us know that you would like to speak. And if you're watching the video, just go to the little button that says raise hand and I'll unmute you, and then you can ask the panelist your question. And let me just go through the questions that people have typed in. So Jeanette earlier had asked, should I have another person named on my daily banking, checking and savings accounts? So I'm guessing that's probably a good question for you, Juliana. Should there be someone else on my banking account? So if you could answer that as a couple, and then as someone who is single, what you might suggest.
Well, I think is that if you're a couple, you're probably okay if nobody's on the bank account. Now, if you have a trust, you should have the bank account in the name of the trust. Then if something were to happen to the two of you, your successor trustee could step in and get into the bank account. But if you don't have a trust and you are single, I highly suggest you have somebody on your bank account, because if something were to happen to you and they needed to access your money, they could go in, write a check, get somebody to help you out. So I think that's really important. Otherwise, it gets locked up and no one can access it.
Okay, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of that, Juliana. So does a power of attorney solve that? If I have someone who's going to act in my best interest, does a power of attorney help that?
It should,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but if I don't have a power of attorney, I can put someone else on my account who's then going to have access. Okay, I think I've got it. Okay, great.
Well, and in the instance, if you pass and you don't have somebody else on your bank account will get locked up in probate if you don't have a trust. So if you have somebody else on the bank account, that money does not get locked up. That would be the reason to list somebody versus just relying on a power of attorney, because once you pass, that power of attorney is null and void.
Okay, so great point. Power of attorney is not the full answer. If I pass, that's null and void.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, talking to an attorney and fully understanding what those ramifications are if you haven't already. And then I guess on that also, we didn't really cover it, and I know we have in past seminars where we've had our attorney on the panel or different attorneys, is to just revise and look at who those people are, because they may not be appropriate or may not even be with us anymore. So just reviewing those documents periodically.
Yep.
And then I think you also mentioned, Juliana, you have people who have taken the time to write down all of their accounts, but they did it 10 years ago and things have changed.
Absolutely. You should be reviewing that every couple of years, without a doubt.
You know, I assume the same for doctors and anyone else on that list. Yeah, just making sure it's current. Great advice. So let's go to the next question. And again, if you'd like to raise your hand, please do. We like live questions. Please tell us what pulse or pulsed, if I'm hearing the word correctly, means again. So the spelling of it, who would like to spell it out?
POLST.
Thank you, Stacey. And it stands for?
You said, but you went over that before. Go ahead.
So if I recall correctly, it's Physician's Order of Life-Sustaining Treatment.
That's correct.
Yeah, so if something happens to us, we're in a bad shape, we're in the emergency room, we're in the hospital, you know, what are our wishes in terms of being resuscitated, basically? Do we want to be resuscitated, do everything possible to keep us alive, or do we have other choices? Do we want to be let go? So it's basically what our end of life wishes are, if I'm understanding that correctly. And our next question, Can Stacey give us some examples of companies or businesses that are case managers?
Would you like me to give that to you and maybe you could send it out to everyone, Brett?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. We can include it in the
Okay.
resource list that goes out tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep, so you're not put on the spot having to list out.
No, I know some, but I just thought, we had talked about just doing it after the fact.
If you're comfortable and one or two come to mind, feel free to say them now, Stacey, and I can definitely include whoever on the list.
There's one that I've worked with quite a bit called Creative Elder Solutions.
Mhm.
And that is the one that I've worked with the most. And the owner's name is Carolyn Vergara. And she really knows her stuff. And I have the utmost respect for Carolyn. So I would highly recommend her.
I would
Creative
actually,
Elder Solutions. I'm sorry?
I would second that too, now that I know the name you mentioned, Stacey. I think we've had Carolyn on one of our panels a couple of years
Yes.
ago. She actually spoke and she
She's-
is wonderful. She's a great community resource.
She's
And then I think,
excellent.
Mark, you just said you've used her, you know of her as well.
Yep.
Yep, great. So I'm just trying to go through that. I should put my glasses on. I probably could read better. Oh, wow. What a difference that makes. Someone else is asking about case managers. Can we recap the 8 squares on the grid? Who would like to recap our squares that we filled in? Other than me.
Remember them all. Finance, legal, healthcare, family.
Family support system,
Trusted
Support system,
advocate.
yeah.
trusted advisor,
Trusted advocates.
advocates, and education.
Good job, guys. Yeah, that was all of them. That's what I had written down. So we'll type those into the handout so you have them. So again, tomorrow morning, an email will go out. It'll have a link to the recording of the webinar. So if you missed anything and you want to re-listen, you're welcome to, of course, or if you want to forward it to someone else. And then in the handout, it'll have the book that Barbara had mentioned. It'll have each of those 8 categories we just talked about. I'll go back and from my notes, type in the different things like will, trust, power of attorney, post, and so forth. So you have all of that information, and then you can hopefully fill in the who's as appropriate. So next question I had here is, so do you want a second person as just a signatory or as a second owner? So assuming that's going back to the bank accounts again. So do you want a second person as a signatory or as an owner? Is there a difference there, Juliana? Does that make any sense, what's being asked?
Stacey might know that better since she came from banking.
Joint tenants are when you have somebody that is a second signature, and that makes it much easier if you have a second person. And in the event of an emergency or a death, that person is, those funds are that person. It doesn't go through all of the other. Banks got very careful about using the and. Do you remember when we would title accounts with an and? It just became so hard to monitor. So really, it's mainly, in my case, Thomas Taylor or Stacey Taylor. That would be a second person. A trust brings a whole different thing into it. It depends on who the trustees are. So again, I think it's taking it a step further, and just having another signature on your account is not going to help with everything. Do some research, talk to any of us, talk to your banker, talk to your financial advisor. If you have an estate attorney, there's lot more to it. Does that answer the question?
I think so, Stacey, and those are great resources you gave. Yeah, go in and talk to your bank.
Very
Obviously,
much
they
so.
know their stuff. You're an attorney if you have one, going to be able to help you, your financial advisor.
Yes.
So if it was a friend, they wouldn't be an owner of my account from what I'm understanding. They would be an additional signer who have access to it.
There's in trust for accounts, ITF accounts, those kinds of things. There's a few ways to label your accounts.
Okay,
So
great.
talk
Thank
to
you.
your banker.
And will a POD work? POD, maybe POA. I think.
No, it's-
POD,
I just-
payable on death.
Yeah, I
Say
just
that
looked
one
it
more
up.
time. Mark, Stacey, one of you?
No, go ahead, Stacey.
Well, the POD is a payable on death.
Oh,
And I would look into that. There's also the ITF in Trust 4. And again, you need to talk with your specific bank.
thank you. So payable on death, POD was the acronym, not POA. So I still have 2 blank boxes in my grid. What did I miss? Great program today as usual. You didn't miss anything. We just had some extra boxes, and rather than me trying to have you draw whatever it would have been, 7 boxes, it was easy to start with 3 by 3. So, and we had space in case we came up with something else. Does a general power of attorney allow them to act on a bank account? Is anyone in a position to be able to answer that if we have just a general power of attorney? It's not specific.
No, I don't think
Let's do
so.
a specific.
Mhm.
So we need a specific power of attorney for finances for bank. Okay.
And I think that what Juliana said is so powerful. They end at death. Power of attorneys are null and void at death.
So even
A
if
lot
it's,
of people forget that. Wouldn't you say, Juliana?
All the time. They think
Yeah.
they still have control and they can get in there. And that power of attorney does not mean anything once the person has passed away. You cannot get into that account.
You can't. Very important.
so that's all power of attorneys, not just a general. Even if I have a specific one for these finances, for these bank accounts, as you just said, all null and void upon death. So we need something else in place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you both for clarifying that, because yeah, we come across that a lot. We'll be helping someone, a family member, with the sale of the home, and they go, "Oh, Mum had a power of attorney. Isn't that all you need?" And it's like, no, that's null and void now. That. Next question. Someone else is asking about the POD. Again, feel free to put hands up. So if you have questions, just raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand or pressing *9 on your phone. Would you repeat the box headers? I only have 5. So that was one that just came up. So just again, for anyone who missed that, finances was the first one, legal, health and medical, family, trusted advocate, and education. They were the 7 boxes, 6 boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then me in the middle, or you, I should say. Pleased to see the questions on chat. So let me just go back over to chat. And
Yeah, Brett, I looked at it. Her question
you.
is, who would handle dispensing assets to grandchildren after they reach the age of majority? No idea.
No, okay. So thank you for reading the question. I hadn't got over the chat, so thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Correct me if I misheard that, but dispensing of assets to grandchildren after someone has passed, where does that responsibility lie? How is that going to be handled? Is anyone able to answer that? Juliana.
Trust, you're going to have an executor of the account who's going to go through probate. They're the ones that are going to be in charge of dispensing your assets. If you don't list in your will who you want your executor to be, somebody from your family can step up, or it'll go to next of kin. If you have a trust, you will lay out in the trust how those assets are distributed. And in the trust, you'll list a successor trustee and then a successor trustee to that successor trustee. So whether that's a family member, a friend, or like Stacey mentioned, a bank trustee, but those are the people in charge.
Thank you, Juliana. Was there any other questions in there, Mark? I'm trying to scan. There's a lot of people using chat, so which is fantastic. Did you pick up any other questions, Mark?
I did not. A little sharing of information and.
I can't reiterate enough, seeing someone such as Juliana for your finances, an attorney, the senior attorneys, in a world of today, you need a lawyer, you need legal representation. There are so many different loopholes that none of us can even imagine. Just make sure everything is in order and have an attorney look things over. because right now, we're talking about PODs and things like that, and those are on your bank accounts and such. But think about your real property, your homes. Who is going to take care of you when you need help? Those kind of things. There's so much. This is, the 9 boxes we have could be 100 boxes, but legal representation and a financial advisor is so important. I can't say that enough. I'm going to share this story. I shared it with the group before. When I worked at the bank, I had a lady come up to me at my desk, and she somehow had gotten a hold of a former bank statement or something that had the bank that one of their accounts were at least. And she came up and she was on this account, and she said, and was asking for information, which we were able to give her because she was on the account. And when all was said and done, she looked at me and she said, "Thank you so much. I have not eaten for 3 days because I didn't know if I had any money." And that was because she had a spouse that had just recently passed away who had handled all the finances. And I was torn apart by that. So from then on, I would communicate. Just like Barbara said, communication is so important. No, talk. It's not a comfortable subject, like Mark said, but it is so important. And when all is said and done, it is a labor of love. It really is. And think of it that way. It's a labor of love, and you want to see your hard work and any assets that you might have in the hands of who you want.
Thank you, Stacey, for sharing that. And that is a really powerful reminder for all of our couples who are on here. It's like, well, my spouse handles the finances. You just heard from Stacey why that's not a good idea to be ignorant or not care about it, even though you've got a great spouse who takes care of everything. If something happens, that's really to your detriment. So it is something you really need to know about is, the retirement accounts, the bank accounts. You just need to know, because lots of stories like Stacey has just shared that we've encountered where the spouse has lost their partner and just doesn't know where to find anything. And you've told me many, Juliana, you all have. So I would just implore people to communicate, as Stacey had said, share the information with each other. So next question. I'm surprised today that no one's putting up their hands. Normally we have lots of people putting up their hands. I'm wondering if the system is broken. Can I just have everyone put up their hand just to make sure things are working? Raise your hand. Okay, it's definitely working. You guys have provided such great information. No one has questions. So we do have one more that's been typed in. Will a trust work with dispensing? Wow, this is going to be a tough one. Will a trust work with dispensing cryptocurrency? This is a vague area. Yes, you're correct. So far, I haven't been able to find any solid information.
I think you need to ask an attorney that question.
Ask an attorney, yeah. Sorry, that's beyond the scope of our expertise here on this call, and you're going to need a very specific attorney, I would suggest, as well, because that is a whole new frontier. So, but I'd love to have you report back to us if you find some answers on that. We definitely see a lot of it in the media and different places about cryptocurrency, and a whole new frontier. So I'm just going to lower the hands. Some people still have their hands up. Rather than calling
Brett,
on you.
there's over on chat. There's one more question that I'll read from Elizabeth. What is the reason for California people to find a doctor before moving to state?
Oh, great question. Stacey, you were talking about that. So why is it so important, someone moving from California to here, to go sort out who their primary care physician is? Why does that matter? Can't I just call up tomorrow and go in?
I was born and raised here, and my doctor became a concierge doctor, and I chose not to do that. And I have struggled to get a doctor myself. It's very difficult. And so Senior living communities partner with several different doctors. They will actually come to the communities. Make sure you have a physician in place and make sure your insurance is covered in Nevada. If you are moving from California and you have Kaiser, we do not have Kaiser in Nevada. So I have seen that become a problem. So doctor is important, and senior living communities can help with that. I don't know of other advocates out there for those that aren't. Do any of you know of any? Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. Like I said, I grew up here. I went to Pediatric Associates. I still know the phone number. It was the same when I was a little girl, and I've struggled to get a doctor here. So we all know it's.
Yeah, I think from a standpoint of, as I said, in assisted living and memory care, you need a local doctor. I don't know if it's like the law, but certainly from an insurance standpoint and a local doctor, if you're moving from California or Arizona or some other state, those two have to be here in Nevada.
Thank you both. And I can attest to how challenging it is. I have my letter here from Renown.
It is.
The doctor I have has been fantastic. I love him to death, and I do go and see him every couple of years for something. And he's now, I don't know if he's retiring or moving, but I need another primary care physician. So I called, and they suggested someone and then told me it's going to be 3 months before you can see them. And by the way, if you do need something, you need to see your primary care physician first before we can then refer you to whoever you might need. So yeah, you can't wait till the last minute to then, by surprise, something happens, you need to see the doctor and you don't have someone, because they're going to tell you, well, we first need to establish that first visit, I think they told me, with my new primary care before I can actually see anyone. So yeah, just to reiterate, if you haven't seen the doctor in a long time, it would be prudent to just set up a primary care physician, do that first visit.
And again, I do have some names you are welcome to call if you and that are accepting new patients. I'm sure that all of the panelists here have them. There are some that are accepting new patients.
That's another great point you make too, Stacey. That's a challenge, because they give you a list and then you follow up and find out that they're not accepting new patients. So yeah, that's
you can get a long list. You can get a really long list, but this many that are accepting new patients. So again, we've done some legwork, and we do know some that are.
So again, it just goes back to what everyone said in the beginning. Plan in advance. Get the things in place that we need, and a doctor is obviously one that we may need and just not know it yet. Great. So a couple more questions. So I'm just going to go over to someone has raised their hand after I put everyone's hand down. So Athena, let me just unmute you. There you go. Go ahead, Athena, and ask your question. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. And you just have to accept that I've allowed you to unmute yourself. And just while you're doing that, I'll just read out the, oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it's just a comment about finding a doctor, that I had a doctor and I went for a visit yesterday, and I was informed by the people at Renown that I couldn't see this doctor anymore unless I changed my insurance to, what's it called? The one, Senior Care Plus, because they had moved all their doctors who dealt with older people to one place, and they made a big arrangement for a whole new, Renown has a whole new policy of its own now in place through Senior Care Plus. But if you don't go to them, you can't go to the doctor that you've had for a year or two. So then I'm in the process of oh dear, I've got to try and find another doctor now. And I mean, one of the problems I've had with Renown continually over the years is you have a doctor and suddenly they leave. And so then you have to try and find another one. But it's annoying when you find a good doctor who's a good geriatric doctor for people as old as me to suddenly say, oh, sorry, you can't come here anymore. That was just a comment.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, yet another reason why we should reach out to our primary care, make sure they're still there, and if we don't have one, get one. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Things are changing all the time. Will a trust work with, oh no, we did that one. Next question was not a question, but a statement. I have the best doctor in Reno. He takes all insurances, even just Medicare and gap insurance. His name is Imran Sheriff, and he is wonderful. So if you want to Google and find that doctor, one of our attendees has had good experience there. And again, Stacey offered to provide some names too. If you're stuck and don't know who, as far as an available primary care physician, feel free to reach out to Stacey. And actually, let me just share this last slide just for a moment before we wrap up here with the phone numbers of each of our panelists on it. And if you do have the last question, we have a couple of minutes to take a question if you wish to do so. But let me just share this. Here we go. So here's the phone numbers should be appearing on your screen of each of our panelists today. So feel free to write down their name and phone number if you want to follow up with any questions you may have. And I'll include that in the handout that goes out tomorrow as well. All of our panelists will be listed. Let me just ask each of you, did you have any closing comments before we end the call today?
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us do this, Brett.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys are just a wealth of knowledge, such great resources we have here in the community. We're very fortunate to have each of you as resources. I'd just like to thank everybody who attended the call today. We've a lot of people on today's call, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2021, hopefully, and look forward to those schedules that are going out in the mail in December. And again, if anyone on the call today, including myself, can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And wishing everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and stay safe over the holidays. And we look forward to seeing you again another time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank
Happy
you, everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.